By the time a movie becomes a classic, we feel like we know everything there is to know about it. After all, we're familiar with the plot, we know who the actors are, and we can even repeat some of the lines. However, sometimes the most interesting stories from the silver screen come from behind the scenes. From foul food to appalling accidents, here are 10 dark stories behind our favorite movies. On August 9, 1996, a portion of the cast and crew of the movie Titanic was finishing up their last day of filming near Halifax, Nova Scotia, before heading south to Baja, Mexico. Major stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet were not present, but other notable figures in the cast and crew were, including actor Bill Paxton and director James Cameron. Since the shoot was scheduled to run from dusk until dawn, at midnight, the cast and crew took a break to celebrate one last meal together. A chowder, which has been identified by various sources as seafood, lobster, or clam, was provided along with other options. Whichever variety it was reportedly quite delicious, with many returning for second helpings. The meal finished and everyone went back to work. Marilyn McAvoy, an artist on the set, noticed how confused everyone around her appeared to be. No one seemed able to do their job or function properly. The situation continued to deteriorate, with people rolling on the floor, laughing, crying, and throwing up. Actor Bill Paxton related his experience to Entertainment Weekly, sharing, "One minute I felt okay. The next minute, I felt so goddamn anxious I wanted to breathe into a paper bag." James Cameron, fearful that there was a deadly neurotoxin in the fish causing the trouble, rushed to the bathroom to make himself sick. His quick thinking ultimately saved him from a hospital stay. When the less fortunate members of the cast and crew were finally taken to a hospital, the culprit was identified as phenylcyclohexyl piperidine, PCP, also known as angel dust. It is an illegal street drug that causes hallucinations, dissociation, and aggressive behavior among other side effects. The numbers vary, but it is estimated 60 to 80 people were exposed to the PCP on set. Halifax police were unable to determine who spiked the chowder that night, and the case was officially closed in 1999, citing a lack of suspects. Cameron has one theory, telling Vanity Fair, "We had fired a crew member the day before because they were creating trouble with the caterers. We believe the poisoning was this idiot's plan to get back at the caterers." Disgruntled former employees aside, this certainly isn't what we think of when people mention drugs in Hollywood. We think we'll skip the chowder for now. We always expect horror movies to leave us on the edge of our seats, but we don't anticipate the behind-the-scenes action to be quite so horrendous. In the late 1970s, renowned director Stanley Kubrick began working on a film adaptation of Stephen King's novel, The Shining. The plot follows a family whose patriarch, a struggling writer, has taken a job as the winter caretaker at a secluded lodge in Colorado. As the story progresses, the couple's son has psychic visions that begin to worsen as his father's mental health unravels. Casting up-and-coming actress Shelley Duvall as his leading lady before he'd even met her, everything seemed to be going swimmingly. Unfortunately, once the shooting began, things quickly unraveled. Kubrick treated Duvall in an increasingly abusive manner, cutting her lines without warning, isolating her from other people, and forcing her to wait long periods before shooting her scenes. He'd berate Duvall about any choices she made for her character while simultaneously praising her co-star Jack Nicholson. Screaming at her over small mistakes, he'd encourage cast and crew members around her to join in on the psychological abuse, urging them not to pity or support Shelley in any way. Kubrick would make the actors shoot scenes over and over, and the iconic baseball bat scene was reshot a record-breaking 127 times. By the end, Duvall's hands were shredded from wielding the bat, her voice was hoarse from screaming, and her eyes were swollen from crying. To garner an authentic reaction from her, Kubrick would keep Duvall in the dark about Nicholson's choices, so she never quite knew what would happen next on set. What we see on screen is a truly terrorized woman. Additionally, much of her work in the film was physical, involving running, screaming, and crying, all while holding the child actor Danny Lloyd. As Duvall tells it, Kubrick doesn't print anything until the 35th take. 35 takes running and crying and carrying a little boy, it gets hard. Her health began to decline from the stress, with her hair falling out in clumps. To make matters worse, the film took over a year to complete, keeping Duvall in this nerve-wracking predicament for quite some time. In the end, author Stephen King was openly critical of Kubrick's adaptation, especially his treatment of Duvall. In 2016, she appeared on Dr. Phil, where she opened up about her mental health struggles. Though we can't blame Kubrick for all of Duvall's present problems, the director certainly didn't help. In 1985, during the filming of Top Gun, a frightening aerial accident occurred. The film follows the journey of a Navy fighter pilot named Maverick as he trains to become an elite pilot at the Top Gun Naval Fighter Weapons School. Art Scholl, an accomplished stunt pilot and aerial cameraman, was flying off the coast of San Diego County, California, to capture footage for the movie. After completing an upright spin as directed, Scholl inadvertently entered into a flat, inverted spin. Ironically enough, in the film, this is the kind of spin that results in Goose's death and Maverick's near death. Two co-workers, mechanic Kevin Kamer and pilot Chuck Wentworth, were also in the air in a separate plane, keeping a lookout for any air traffic. The pair observed Scholl entering the spin around 4,000 feet, and at 3,000 feet he radioed, "I have a problem." Still in trouble at 1,500 feet, Scholl radioed again saying, "I have a real problem." Unfortunately, Scholl was unable to recover, and his aircraft crashed into the Pacific Ocean roughly 5 miles off the coast of California. By the time Kamer and Wentworth reached the area where Scholl's plane should have been, there was no sign of him. The National Transportation Safety Board concluded that the flat inverted spin caused Scholl to become disoriented, losing control of his aircraft. Others speculate that equipment must have malfunctioned since Scholl was highly skilled and had recovered from inverted flat spins in the past. While some debris was retrieved, the entirety of the plane along with Scholl's body was never found. The movie, released in 1986, was dedicated to his memory. In the early 1960s, the prolific director Alfred Hitchcock saw bright young talent Tippi Hedren in a commercial. Believing that the starlet could become the next Grace Kelly, he offered her a 7-year contract, which she happily accepted. However, for all of Hitchcock's artistic acclaim, he had a dark side that Hedren became uncomfortably familiar with. The pair embarked on their first film together, The Birds, a thriller about a small California town that is inexplicably and violently terrorized by flocks of birds. While on set, Hitchcock forbade other male cast members from touching or talking to Hedren. She remembers him becoming icy and petulant on set whenever he caught her speaking to a male. Hedren often spied his car cruising slowly by her home, and once in the back of a limo, he forcefully tried to kiss her. After Hedren refused his advances, Hitchcock's behavior became increasingly difficult for her to handle. While shooting The Birds, Hedren found herself in unnecessary danger on multiple occasions. During the climax of the plot, birds attack Hedren, and she was assured multiple times that mechanical birds would be used. However, on the day of filming, she was informed that live ones would be used instead. Instructing the handlers to tie birds to her costume and lob other ones at her as the cameras rolled, Hitchcock simply watched the mayhem. Terrified, Hedren recounts, "I was too focused on my own survival to notice, but I was told later that it was even more horrifying and heartbreaking for the crew to watch. And there wasn't anything anyone but Hitchcock could do to put a stop to it." Hitchcock's abuse of Hedren continued during their second film, Marnie, and he even installed a secret door in her dressing room to his office. After she refused to work with him again, Hitchcock held her to their contract, effectively paralyzing her career. For the duration of the 7 years Hedren had agreed to, Hitchcock refused to cast her in any more of his movies. 3 years passed between Marnie and her next movie, A Countess from Hong Kong. The film, directed by Charlie Chaplin, had her in a supporting role. Sadly, none of the projects she embarked on working with Hitchcock enjoyed the same success as Marnie or The Birds. At an event hosted by the Television Critics Association in 2012, Hedren stated, "There was absolutely nothing I could do legally whatsoever. There were no laws about this kind of situation. If this happened today, I would be a very rich woman." Hedren has gone on to speak publicly about the circumstances of her relationship with Hitchcock multiple times, both in interviews and in her book Tippy, a memoir, published in 2016. When it comes to classics in the scares department, it's pretty hard to beat the 1982 film Poltergeist. The horror film follows the Freeling family as they find themselves tormented by ghosts in their own home. Although the movie is creepy enough by itself, it becomes exponentially more so once you've heard this. In a particularly harrowing scene, lead actress Jo Beth Williams is submerged in mud and confronted with skeletons. Unbeknownst to Williams and many other members of the cast and crew, those skeletons were actual human remains. As she tells it, "I was in the mud and goop all day, every day for like 4 or 5 days, with skeletons all around me. As I was screaming, in my innocence and naivete, I assumed they were prop skeletons made out of plastic or rubber. It turns out that fake skeletons would be far more expensive to create than purchasing actual human bones. And well, we suppose Hollywood does have to look out for their bottom line." Another moment during filming nearly turned tragic. In the plot, child actor Oliver Robbins is attacked by a possessed clown doll. While shooting that scene, the mechanical doll malfunctioned, nearly strangling Robbins in the process. At first, when the child yelped, "I can't breathe," Steven Spielberg thought he was simply ad-libbing. It wasn't until Robbins' color began to change that Spielberg raced over to pull the prop off him, saving his life. This just goes to show that Hollywood isn't all glitz and glamour, and you might find yourself wading around a pool of mud with human remains. All in a day's work, right? In the early 1980s, 4 directors, including Steven Spielberg and John Landis, all decided to work together to adapt the popular 1960s television show The Twilight Zone into a movie. Unfortunately, on the last day of filming, the set was touched by tragedy. On July 23, 1982, at 2:20 a.m., actor Vic Morrow and his 2 young co-stars, 6-year-old Renee Shen Chen and 7-year-old Micah Din Lei, were shooting a sequence set in the Vietnam War. In the scene, they're chased by a helicopter, but during filming, the pilot was disoriented by the special effects explosions. He lost control of the aircraft, bringing it down right on top of Morrow and the 2 children. All 3 died instantly. Horribly enough, the children should not have even been on set that late. But in order to skirt around the curfew set by child labor laws, Chen and Lei were hired as extras rather than actors. Director John Landis, the special effects coordinator, the helicopter pilot, and 2 other men working on set were charged with involuntary manslaughter, although they were later acquitted. All 3 victims' families filed lawsuits against John Landis, Steven Spielberg, and Warner Brothers, and settled for undisclosed amounts. In the end, the scene containing Chen, Lei, and the graphic accident was understandably deleted from the film. In 1928, Michael Curtiz, who would go on to direct the famed movie Casablanca, was still relatively new to Hollywood. Eager to make his mark, Curtiz's new movie Noah's Ark was billed in hyperbolic fashion as the most spectacular drama to ever reach the motion picture screen. Since it was meant to be a spectacle for the ages, Curtiz wanted everything to be as realistic as possible, including the dramatic biblical flood. Though he was urged to use miniature figurines, Curtiz refused and demanded a full-scale reproduction of the natural disaster, complete with live humans, animals, and roughly 600,000 gallons of water. The extras, which included a young John Wayne, unaware of how much and how fast the water would be coming at them, erupted into a very real panic on the day of the shoot. The consequences were dire. Aside from multiple extras ending up wounded, with one reportedly having to have their leg amputated, 3 also allegedly died. The controversial scene remained in the movie, even though the fear seen in the extras is very real. The calamity could certainly have been avoided, and the event is credited for inspiring the introduction of safety regulations in Hollywood. Like Noah's Ark, the 1925 version of Ben-Hur was shot at a time when safety was scant. Based off the 1880 novel Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ by Lew Wallace, the story is set in 1st century Jerusalem and follows the life and trials of a wealthy Jew named Judah Ben-Hur. The story is popular and was first made into a silent film in 1907. There have been subsequent versions released in 1959 and 2016, as well as smaller animated and television adaptations of the story. However, the 1925 film was plagued by problems, including a lengthy and expensive shoot in Italy, which was under Mussolini's fascist dictatorship at the time. An ancient Roman catacomb was destroyed, director Fred Niblo mistreated child extras, and an elderly cast member nearly died of pneumonia. All of these on their own would make for a nasty experience, but when you factor in what happened during the chariot scene, it makes everything else seem inconsequential. To capture the famous chariot race between the titular character and his nemesis Messala, a giant reproduction of the Colosseum had been built. Unfortunately, it was not equipped to properly handle horses and chariots, and after a few takes, ruts developed in the track that had devastating consequences. As the actors rounded the curve of the track on their chariots, one of the vehicle's wheels broke. When the hub hit the ground, it launched its rider, an unnamed stuntman, high up into the air. He fell onto a nearby pile of lumber and subsequently died of internal injuries. Additionally, at least 100 horses were killed during filming. Chariot crashes were common and killed many, but most egregiously, the second unit director, B. Reeves Eason, refused to allow a veterinarian to take care of the animals. Anytime a horse showed the slightest sign of injury, Eason ordered it to be shot. To top it off, none of the footage shot in Rome ended up being usable. It was deemed too shadowy, and the entire scene was reshot on a soundstage in Culver City, California. Sadly, the equine death toll continued to rise, with 5 horses dying in the climactic chariot crash scene. Despite the problematic process and massive $3.9 million budget, the largest for any movie at the time, the film was a success, and viewers were none the wiser about the hazardous conditions that had created such a thrilling cinematic experience. Few movies have quite as much timeless appeal as The Wizard of Oz. From Judy Garland's dreamy crooning of Somewhere Over the Rainbow to generations of children frightened by Margaret Hamilton's portrayal of the Wicked Witch, the movie, adapted from L. Frank Baum's beloved series of books, continues to dazzle. Unfortunately, the 1939 classic was riddled with horrifying experiences that make the film seem less family-friendly and more controversial over time. Judy Garland, who was only 17, was instructed to lose weight for the role. She was given amphetamines and placed on a diet of chicken soup, black coffee, and cigarettes. The amphetamines served a dual role of suppressing her appetite and keeping her up for the grueling 72-hour-long shoots. In between shots, Garland and fellow castmates were given sleeping pills so they would essentially sleep and work on command through an upper and downer drug cycle. This habit haunted Garland for the rest of her life, and she eventually died of a drug overdose at 47 years of age. After her death, Sid Luft, Garland's ex-husband, revealed that Garland told him she was continually groped by the actors who played the Munchkins, saying they would make Judy's life miserable on set by putting their hands under her dress. The men were 40 or more years old. Aside from her horrific treatment, the cast was continually put in harm's way. Actor Buddy Ebsen was originally slated to play the Tin Man, but he suffered an extremely dangerous reaction to the makeup, which contained aluminum powder, and was given time off. While he was recovering, he was replaced by Jack Haley. Additionally, the bright lights needed to film in color at the time were so hot that multiple crew members fainted, and actor Burt Lair frequently overheated in his Cowardly Lion costume. But the injuries didn't stop there. Margaret Hamilton was severely burned by a malfunctioning trapdoor that left her exposed to pyrotechnics, and her stunt double Betty Danko was also harmed by pyrotechnics in another scene. Furthermore, some props and costumes on the set were toxic. Both the Scarecrow's costume and the Wicked Witch's broom were made of carcinogenic materials, and the snow in the poppies scene was asbestos fibers. Despite how heartwarming the tale of The Wizard of Oz may be, it has gone down in Hollywood history as one of the most dangerous films to work on. In 1980, talented stuntwoman Heidi von Beltz got a call from her then-boyfriend Bobby Bass. He was working as a stunt coordinator on the set of the Cannonball Run, just outside of Las Vegas, and thought von Beltz would be a great fit for Farrah Fawcett's double. The movie is a comedic tale of an eclectic bunch of car racing teams in the United States. The groups embark on a cross-country contest, attempting to see who can be the fastest to drive from Connecticut to California. Upon von Beltz's arrival, it became clear that not everything was on the up and up. She had been told that she would ride in the passenger seat of a car as it zigzagged through oncoming traffic. But the Aston Martin she was meant to ride in seemed wildly unsafe. The tires were bald, the steering was defective, and the clutch didn't seem to work. For the car to even get started, it had to be pushed by another car, and worst of all, there were no seatbelts installed. The director, Hal Needham, had the car serviced by a mechanic, and then Bass took the car out for a spin. When he returned, he told von Beltz and the driver, Jimmy Nickerson, that the Aston Martin was ready to go. Nickerson expressed concern, arguing more repairs needed to be made, and the car still didn't have seatbelts. Regrettably, he was overruled in the interest of time. Once shooting began, von Beltz recalls hearing someone yell, "Faster, faster," over a walkie-talkie before the Aston Martin collided head-on with an oncoming car, and her body was thrown violently into the windshield. Originally, the car was supposed to swerve at the last minute to avoid the oncoming traffic, but the steering column locked, causing a crash that was never meant to happen. The scene was reshot for the movie. Following the crash, von Beltz was paralyzed from the neck down due to a severe break at her fifth vertebra. Doctors told her to prepare for a wheelchair-bound life, but von Beltz managed to stand unassisted after many years of work. She never regained her full mobility, but she was able to reclaim some of her physical abilities over time. As a result of the accident, new safety guidelines that mandated seatbelts in all stunt cars were released. She filed a wrongful injury suit and was subsequently awarded $4.6 million. Despite her injury, von Beltz remained optimistic and kind and was greatly missed by her friends and family when she passed away in 2015 at the age of 59. Have you heard any of these Hollywood horror stories before? Or is there a juicy one that we missed? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching.